not like this. Life is like this. Life is not like this. Take a breath. Give medicine and be in ceremony for yourself first.
My elders used to always say that the whole point of our teachings as Indigenous people, they'd say a couple things. Yes, these are our teachings and we are meant to carry them. But if we don't share them, they don't go anywhere. They don't serve any purpose. So we have a responsibility to share them.
Look up. The elders taught me to look up and see who and what's around you. As two spirit people, we can go anywhere and find ceremony. We can go anywhere because such is our fluid nature, and find teachings and find ceremony.
Well, I want to talk about this idea of smudging. And I've never smudged before. And I remember we had to do using Algonquin sage. What exactly is the Algonquin sage, Holly?
It's a medicine. It's that simple. It's a medicine that is found on the earth in many different places. There's many different types of sage that Indigenous people, but it is one of our 4 sacred medicines, and it can be found a lot of different places. There it is.
Okay.
There it is. Yeah, it is one of our 4 sacred medicines, and we burn it. Well, practically speaking, it is an antibacterial, so it is a good antibacterial. Smudge your house, it'll get rid of germs in no time. But it's spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It is a cleanser. It is, as you breathe it in, pass it over your body, what you're doing is, bringing.
Oh, I'll do it too.
We're gonna e-smudge, y'all. I pass it over my eyes. Sometimes I breathe it in. So when I breathe it in, what I want to do is bring that into my lungs and into my being so that I work that cleansing from the inside out. But when you pass it up over your head, you're praying and being thankful for a clear mind. You're asking for good health physically, mentally, and spiritually is what I'm getting at. So it's something that you will see frequently in people's homes. It's something that you will see people at ceremonies do. Even at meetings now, let's say, even professional meetings, where we're finding that various organizations are starting to acknowledge Indigenous presence, and that they are visitors and settlers to the land with land acknowledgements. Sometimes you will see people break out a smudge then too. But use it. It's good stuff.
And you said it's sorry, please.
That sage I grew. So it grows wild in Ontario, this stuff. That's why it's called Algonquin sage, because a lot of Ontario, a lot, but not all, because I won't upset anybody. A lot of Ontario is Ojibwe, so the Ojibwe people are related to the Algonquin people. But this grows wild. You can pick it in Northern Ontario. There are lots of non-Indigenous people who are actually growing this as an ornamental in their garden. So my little urban folks who are wandering around the city, a lot of my street involved Indigenous folks, I say to them, have a look around. This is what the plant looks like. If you see it growing in somebody's garden, just ask them. Ask them if at the end of the season, you can clip it for them. And then you have access to medicines, right? There are, like Holly said, there's lots of different kinds of sage. Lots of times what you see is this hard, crunchy kind of sage. It's grown in the desert. That stuff doesn't grow naturally here, and it's got a beautiful kind of perfumey smell, but I like the Algonquin sage better. I'm biased.
But I love the teaching that you said too about, and how you spoke about it, about just letting go and clearing your mind and being present in the experience that we're about to have, and how important that is, even every day. when you're going into a new situation to clear your mind and be present. So I'd like
To
to keep
start the
that
day,
to
to
start.
start the day, to end the
Mm,
day at any point where you need, it's like, it's a grounding tool. Like just the smell of sage. Like I remember walking into a therapist's office when I used to go to one of the Indigenous agencies in Ottawa, and walking into that space and just smelling that sage because they burn it regularly, or sweetgrass, or any of those medicines. It's just kind of like, okay, it's going to be okay.
ooh,
Mhm.
mhm,
One thing I want to add to that is, the practice of smudging is a ceremony. It's a ceremony with yourself. And then there's one thing I've learned just through my own walking my own red road, but also through having worked with the incarcerated population, having worked with a number of Indigenous people across this province, is being in ceremony with yourself could be so simple. And I'll give you an example. We need to think outside the box lots of times, because particularly Two-Spirit people, particularly urban Indigenous people, we don't always have ready access to elders.
mhm.
We don't have ready access to medicine. So I love the idea of what Sharp said is, if you see somebody in a garden, just ask and take what you need. But I'll give you an example. So it's a story that sticks out in my mind. I was visiting one of my Indigenous brothers in jail, as per my profession, and because I actually care. But we had talked about all things Indigenous and all things ceremony, and we talked a lot about the lack of access. And so in that moment, what came to me very quickly was that, you know what? I have the ability to help this brother think outside of the box. And so water, for instance, I'm going to use water as an example, and this is part of the story. Water is life, water is sacred. I think we pretty much all know and agree that that's the case. Certainly it's available to all people, but again, access is an issue, and certainly in the incarcerated population, they don't have access to water, so they think. But the water that comes through the jail pipes is just as sacred as going down to the river, going down to the stream. So what I think is great and wonderful about Two-Spirit people is that because we have the an inherent ability to think outside the box, to provide access, to provide information. So again, it goes back to our some of our original statements was our way of life is not so rigid, it is fluid. Yes, we have protocols and whatnot, but again, those again, I use the example of thinking outside of the box. That water in those jail pipes is no less sacred than the one that came from the river. So that's kind of how I would describe a lot of the Two-Spirit people I know think. They often say the things that are unsaid. They think differently. They're creative. They're open. And that's why, again, I go back to, the Two-Spirit people are visionaries. And we have the ability to open minds and open families and communities into new beginnings and new days. Utilize that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And just to kind of riff off Holly, I also worked with incarcerated folks, and many years ago had a Two-Spirit friend of mine share a water ceremony with me. Water is life. Water is sacred. It's the blood of Mother Earth. And so for my folks on the street, because the other thing that happens, right, is people think they're not worthy of ceremony.
Mm,
particularly if they're struggling with substances or they're incarcerated or they're not following the red road or whatever. So people have this, I'm not worthy. Could you come and smudge me? I can't smudge myself. Sure you can. But as Holly said, often people don't have access to medicines, or if life is chaotic, they can't hold on to stuff or whatever. But we can, particularly in Canada, in some places, access water. Water through the pipes, water in a bottle. It's all water. And so I would encourage the folks that I worked with, okay, so you can't smudge. Great. You got a tap? Great. Turn on the tap. Hold some of that water in your hand. Look at it. Smell it. Taste it. Offer your thanks to it. And when you offer your thanks to it, you are blessing that water. Not that you really need to, because it's already sacred, just like you are.
Ooh.
And you can take that water and you can put it on your head, or wash your hands, or wash your heart in exactly the same way as we used this medicine. And we have that access. So to Holly's point about decolonizing, I'm all over decolonizing, baby. I'm all over decolonizing the shit that continues to cause barriers for our people to access ceremony, which is their birthright, which is everybody's birthright.
One's birthright. What you just said just stopped me right there. We are all sacred. And regardless of the circumstance, regardless of what has happened, you are sacred. And and you give thanks. And I'm all about gratitude. I strongly believe that in gratitude, when you give thanks and receive that, it changes your life. That's magic in my world. Right? And I believe everyone's worthy of that. It's beautiful.
And gratitude is the core of our way. Like when my elder shared with me, there's a prayer that I say in Anishinaabe. And throughout that prayer, you hear the word miigwech. We don't pray begging for stuff from our creator. We pray in gratitude, knowing that Gijiminido is giving us what we need, whether or not we understand what it is, what we need.
Ooh.
We give gratitude to Gijiminido for giving us life, for giving us everything that we need. We don't need to ask. We don't need, because what we need will be given to us.
You speak my language. I love this. I love this. And let's talk a little bit about the tears. Like we're talking about water. And, of course, we are at a joining ceremony, which is coming together of two beautiful people. And we cried. That happens. There are tissue boxes around. And let me just say, I will share clips from that wedding. It is so beautiful and so touching. But you share that you don't throw away the tissue paper. There was a sacred fire that was built, and you offered those tears to the fire. Can we talk a little bit about that offering and what that means? Oh, see you kissing me.
I'm pointing.
Oh, you're pointing. Oh.
I'm pointing with my lips. I'm Helen Sharp. She got to speak on it. It's hers. I'm pointing with my lips. There you go.
Okay. So one of the teachings that I was given is, water is life. Our body is mostly water. We can't live without water. We need that water. And Indigenous people have understood for a long time, and science is finally catching up. Don't you know? Always so excited for the scientists when they catch up with us. That crying is actually very beneficial for us, and depending on what we're crying about, there's a different chemical composition to our tears, and so that's what science has found out. But we have known, as part of our own teachings about health and well-being and all of those things, that crying, that expression of that emotion comes from your spirit, and that it is beneficial for you. And one of my warriors' teachings is that it takes more strength to shed tears than it does to hold them back. Right? So it flips what our mainstream world says on its head. So we have acknowledged, at least in the teachings among the elders that I've sat with, that those tears are sacred. If you shed tears in ceremony, they are sacred because your spirit has been touched.
Mm.
And we honor the sacredness because, in a sense, those tears are a prayer. They are a prayer.
Mhm.
You are letting go of something that you need to let go of. So we capture them in those, either in a handkerchief or a Kleenex or whatever. And we were lucky enough to have a sacred fire. And we offer them to the sacred fire. You can also offer the, if it's something that's biodegradable, you can offer it to the earth. You can chuck it in the water. We offer them to the fire so that the fire will turn that tear into smoke, take it into the world so that it can go where it can do the most good
Oh my goodness, beautiful.
and nourish, right? Nourish everything else, all of creation, just as shedding those tears has, in a sense, nourished you.
And Holly, you know what?
Well.
You know what? That's like perfect timing because I was just about to say at the ceremony, Holly also said laughter is medicine. And before I could even say nothing, there she did, bust out laughing.
Laughter is medicine, truly, 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 laughter is medicine. And, you know, I think people get weighted down by the heaviness of being so boxed in and trying to control the environment around them. And, you know, we have lost joy, you know, and I'm just talking generally, we've lost joy and we've lost laughter. And, you know, what I love about my marriage so far is that we wake up laughing and we go to bed laughing. Laughter carries us through the day. And what's great about Indigenous people is that even in crisis, we laugh.
Yes.
And you know, the colonized world out there has told us that it's inappropriate. It's not. It feels good to laugh. You know, if you say something funny, I'm going to laugh.
And loud too.
Right. And, you know, it's just, it's so necessary to
Yes.
bring back laughter, to bring back crying. Because laughter is a way of letting go. It's a way of relief as well, that comic relief, so to speak. So, you know, our coping mechanisms, our ways of being, our ways of coping is laughter and crying. But we're not doing it. I mean, I try. I like to make people laugh. I like to laugh. Feels good. Sharp makes me laugh. That's why she's my people.
And we all know we laugh every day on Tea Time with Tammie. At least we find reasons to.
That is good medicine.
Mm-hmm.
I was just laughing today because we just released our mobile phone throwing. It was hilarious. Anyways, yeah, I know, right? We find any ways to laugh, especially now. And as the world goes through this pandemic, and that's the whole point, is first finding ways for ourselves to laugh. And then if we are lucky enough to share that, at least with one other person, we don't even know the impact that laughter has on that particular person, how that can that can have a rippling effect. You don't know what, you know, that by making someone smile or laugh can change, you know, their life or circumstances. So I truly honor the fact that I'm quite easily amused.
But that's the gift. That's the gift, right? Like that gift of being able to shift energy. Holly talked about two-spirit people being acknowledged before, you know, Chris got lost, and as healers, as helpers, and that's not just something that Indigenous two-spirit people carry, right? LGBTQ people carry that. That is part of that gift. Why the hell do you think so many straight people want to go to Pride? Because that energy is so wah, or why so many people want to go to a gay bar because that energy is wah, or why has drag taken off because that energy, it shifts things. People are seeking something to shift them out of
Different.
the bullshit that we're all living in.
Different is good.
Different is good.
Don't fear
Fluidity.
change.
Yeah.
Fear is a liar.
Ain't that truth?
That's one thing that I keep in my head.
And above your head, I was just going to talk about that. Just wanted to talk a little bit about some other elements of the ceremony as well. That star blanket that you have, well, the star blanket for the ceremony was gorgeous, and you also have one behind you as well, and that is what we use to wrap you. And is that the symbol of now that you are a joined couple? Is that what that star blanket is?
Partly.
Okay.
So this is not the star blanket. Just to clarify, this is not the star blanket that was used in ceremony. This belongs to my daughter. So the star blanket that we used for ceremony was done by a woman out west, and her name is Tara Campbell, and she basically took information from me about what it is that I wanted to see. And so I sent her the rainbow colors. So they're all colors of the rainbow, the beautiful star blanket that was used for ceremony. And for me, when you are, number one, that star blanket for me is representative of spirit. Spirit comes first for us. So it's representative of spirit. It's representative of spirit wrapping us, accepting us, welcoming us into the recognition of being a married couple in the spirit and in the physical world. It is very representative of my chosen family and friends. Wrapping me and accepting us, right? Welcoming us into the family, into the community. Really, that's it all. Everything in ceremony always starts with spirit. So again, even in these material things like the blanket, this has a spirit. And so that spirit is also too is coming to wrap us and welcome us. I don't know if Sharp has anything else to add to that.
It's also recognition of how we come from the star people.
Yes.
Again, I'm not a fluent language speaker, but the Algonquin and Ojibwe people refer to themselves as Anishinaabe. And if that word is broken down, it's that one that was lowered down from the sky world. And I've actually had the opportunity there's a sacred site out near Winnipeg, which is held as the place where that first Anishinaabe was lowered down. And if you think you felt something coming in this year, girl, you went to that place.
We're going.
I can't even describe it.
Wow.
But that star blanket reminds us that we come from the star people. There's all kinds of teachings around that, but we won't get into that today.
One of the things, that you did, because of course, when we talk about ceremony, we also talk about food. And one of the things I saw you do, Sharp, was to bless the food. Did you smudge the food? Is that what you were doing? And you offered it to the ancestors, like what do you call that? A sacred plate?
Spirit plate.
Spirit plates? Can we talk a little bit about the feast food? I know that Holly, you prepared it. Can you talk a little bit about feast food? And I also want Sharp to share about the berry story, because that's probably the number one thing someone asks me when they watch Love is Sacred. So can we start with you, Holly?
Yeah, well, first off, I need to acknowledge that it was my cousin Luke, that provided the wild meat for us. He is a hunter, fisherman, forager, and always living off the land as much as possible. And so, as per our teachings, customs, and practices. There was some trade going on there. I gifted him with wild rice for his giant family, and he gifted me some meat for ceremony. So that wild meat, I need to say that it came from the Stony Point territory, the Kettle and Stony Point territory, fresh off the land from my cousin Luke. And so in preparing traditional feast food, it's certainly not my first time, and it was good.
It was
Wasn't
It was
very
good.
down, girls.
I got the leftovers. I
Down.
had the best of all that, baby.
Anyway, yeah, no, it was good. So it's not the traditional, not the first traditional feast that I've ever prepared. The teachings, customs, and practices surrounding the preparation of traditional feast food I got from my elders in Batchewana First Nation in Sault Ste. Marie. So I need to acknowledge that. And so I've been able to carry those teachings forward to home to my territory here in the South. So as you tasted, there was no salt, there was no pepper, there was no Old Bay seasoning. There was, I did incorporate some contemporary, like the pickerel cheeks, the fried pickerel cheeks. That was more contemporary.
It was really good.
But there was still fish there. So the wild rice I got from Red Lake First Nation, who has cultivated and harvested wild rice for some time. It's what they're known for. Fish, deer, duck. Clearly, it's representative of, the animals on the land, animals in the water. And the reason why we do that, we had berries, as you know, strawberries, blueberries. The reason why we do that is because we need to honor and welcome and feed the ancestors first. Just similarly, we like to think that, the old people and the elders, get on the bus first, or, you give them their seat, those kinds of, it's manners really that we honor, and it's customary, and it's acknowledgement, so many things, but feeding them and thanking them for coming to join us on that very special day. So, the reason why we keep it small now, the portions small, are because things are magnified in the spirit world. And so, if you put a big old heaping scoop on there, that person is, the spirit world's going to have a whole lot of food to get through. And we don't like wasting. So take what you need, no more, no less. I know what they need is just a small amount, maybe one berry, one this, but yeah, we're feeding them to thank them and to celebrate, their presence there. It's that offering of food and water, and cedar tea was there. It's for so many reasons, but that's just a few of them.
Beautiful. Well, Shar, please, can you share the importance of strawberries and that story that you shared with was it a woman who was telling you about that you had to eat the leaves as you were. You think I'm bringing
every time I've looked at the video that you did a couple of times, and I'm kind of going, I wonder how many people are looking at me going, what the hell is she saying? Because you spend far too much time on my face telling that story in that video. I'm just saying. So yeah, we have that spirit plate in ceremony, and often too we will feast our sacred tools or our bundles like once or twice a month or 4 times a year. We'll feast our ancestors. My father passed away in September, so every full moon, because he passed away on the full moon, I put out a spirit plate for him for the first year of his crossing. Yeah, so we always acknowledge that we wouldn't have these ceremonies if it wasn't for our ancestors, if it wasn't for the spirits that come, like I called them in for that ceremony, right? We sang songs, we sounded the eagle whistle, we invited our ancestors to come to keep us safe, to continue to whisper in our ears, and to let us know what it is we need to do. And so we thank them by feeding them, because why would you invite somebody to your ceremony and then not include them in the feast? That would just be rude. So we do
Right.
smudge the food. We do smudge the food, and then we make up that little and we offer it to the fire or we put it out on the land. So that's strawberry teaching. We always have berries, but particularly we have strawberries. So, and oh God, I should have grabbed one. I don't even know if I have it in the house. Anyways, we always have strawberries if we can, because strawberry is the first fruit, right? Strawberry comes out in early summer, and it's our first kind of plant-based food that starts to make itself evident. So it is really a gift, because for us in the old times, long winters could be hard. You could run out of your food stocks, right? And so it's that sweetness of what Shkakamekwe, Mother Earth, has to give us. There are all kinds of teachings around that strawberry, but one of the reasons is another reason is because it looks like a heart. And when you hold it up and you cut that berry in half, you can see it's got chambers in it, just like a human heart. There's stories that talk about how the fact that it's also shaped like a womb. And the seeds on that berry are on the outside, and there's something that represents as well, right? But my favorite story that I told all you folks at the ceremony was of one of the very first times I went into a sweat lodge. It was with this wonderful Ojibwe grandmother. Her name was Lillian Pitawanakwat. She was just adorable. So about the third round of the sweat, she brings in her pipe, she smokes pipe, and then she hands around a bowl of berries, and the berries are whole. And everybody kind of grabs it by the leaves. Oh my God, because I've been sweating and it's been hot. And now we're all sitting in this lodge, and there's a lot of women in the lodge because it was just a women's lodge. And we're holding these leaves and kind of going, what is this? Not like there's a garbage can in here. And that grandmother, she's kind of looking, because she's typical little Ojibwe grandmother, short, kind of well upholstered, little brown eyes just twinkling out of her face. She's just gorgeous. And she's watching us, eh? We're all kind of looking at one another and looking at these leaves in our hands. She says, what you gonna do with that? Oh, that's medicine. Gotta eat that medicine. Good for you. You think I'm gonna bring some garbage in my lodge? Now we're all embarrassed. The berries are gone. So, and they're bitter. Those berries can be bitter. But it's a teaching. Is it the teaching that when we come to life, whatever we encounter, there is bitterness and there is sweetness. And we consume that leaf with the berry because it reminds us of that. The other thing is that there's a lot of medicine in that leaf, which is different from the medicine of the berry. They all operate on the body differently. And so every time, I mean, it's amazing how sometimes the way that an elder conveys something has an impact on you. I never forgot after that sweat. I always make a point when I grab a berry, particularly in ceremony. I may not always do it when I'm just having a first night, but most of the time I do. I pick up that berry and I try not to even look at the leaves, because sometimes the leaves ain't looking so good depending on where you get your berries from. And I take that first bite and I feel the difference in the textures, and I feel the difference in the flavors. And I remember that Kokum, who's in the spirit world now, right? And every time I remember her, I give thanks to her for the teachings that she shared. And it's a funny story to tell. And I get to feel a little bit like what she must have felt sitting in that lodge, watching all of us kind of go on those very bitter leaves.
Oh, I love
And on
that.
that note, I also want to say, I want to bring it back to, ceremony and thinking outside of the box. Those weren't wild strawberries. I didn't go pick those in the bush, but that doesn't make them any less sacred.
Mhm.
And I want to use, this is a huge point that I want to drive home to Two-Spirit people, urban Indigenous people, anybody really, actually, is, we have to think outside the box more, because a lot of what's happening isn't working. It's not. So do differently. You know, the water in the pipes in the jail is just as sacred as, you know, those, the water at the lakes or rivers, the store-bought strawberries. Those are just as sacred. Those store-bought blueberries. You know, we have to stop saying, that's not good enough, or that's not right enough. Clearly, there are some things that need to be called out in life. But when it comes to, there's so many things that get bickered and argued about that don't need to be bickered and argued about. You know, our people are
Colonization.
not inherently rigid people. Where does that come from? Stop and think about where that comes from. So and this is a teaching that I've shared with with some two-spirit people, was, and I learned it from a two-spirit storytelling project that I'm in. It's, you know, be in ceremony with yourself first. And that breath is medicine. That taking that deep breath and exhaling, that breath is medicine. And as we take it, what do I do? I would ask my wife if she was available. I'd say, what do I do every morning? Inhale the good shit, exhale the bullshit. Breath is medicine. And you can, even for a moment, be in ceremony for yourself, no matter where you are. You can take medicine into your being just by breathing.